Next we're going to be making the leg. Going to start off with ivory yarn, and we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. Then we're going to chain 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. In the second chain from the hook we're going to make an increase. That's 2 single crochets in the same stitch. In the next chain we're going to make just 1 single crochet. In the next chain, which is the last one, we're going to make a 4 single crochet increase. So we're going to make 4 single crochets in the same spot. That was number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. You'll notice we are now on the other side of the starting chain. So in the next spot we're only going to make 1 single crochet. And in our last spot, which is also our first spot, we are going to make an increase. That is 2 single crochets in the same place, which brings us to the end of round 1 of the foot. For round 2, we're starting off by making 2 increases in the first 2 stitches. So the first stitch gets an increase, and the second stitch gets an increase. The next stitch gets just 1 single crochet. The next 4 stitches will get an increase each, so that's 4 increases. So this is increase number 1. Increase number 2. Increase number 3, increase number 4, the next stitch only gets a single crochet, and then the last 2 stitches will get an increase each. So that's increase number 1 and increase number 2 in the final stitch, which brings us to the end of round 2, but we're going to include 1 shift stitch in this round. A shift stitch is an extra stitch that you make, and it's simply there to move the position of a stitch marker so that your increases and your decreases can line up nicely. So we're basically just making 1 extra single crochet, but it doesn't count as a stitch because we move the stitch marker to this new position. Now for round 3, we're going to make a round of slip stitches around. If you're new to this, you might want to go up a hook size to a 4mm or even a 4,5 so that your slip stitches aren't too tight. If you are good at controlling your tension, you can stay with a 3,5mm. And to make the slip stitches, you basically go through the stitch, you hook the yarn, pull it back through the stitch and through the loop on your hook. You don't want to pull too tight when you do this. So hook the yarn, pull through the stitch and through the loop on the hook. Through the stitch, hook the yarn, pull through the stitch, through the yarn on the hook. So that's 3 slip stitches so far. We want to make 1 in each stitch so that we have a total of 18. So that's number 4, number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So that is the end of round 3. We're going to change color in the next round, so you can simply snip the yarn off. You don't need a long yarn tail at all. And that's the end of round 3. For round 4, we're going to make 18 single crochets working in the back loops only of the slip stitches we made in the previous round. We're also changing color to our main color. So what we're going to do is we're just going to hook the main color, pull it through the loop on our hook at the moment, take our ivory yarn tail and pull it tight so that that ivory stitch actually disappears and you're only left with a lilac stitch. I then chain 1, and now we're going to work back loops only. Now you've got a V for each stitch that you've made. Now normally we go under both loops of this V to work our stitches, but the one closest to your body is called the front loop, the one furthest away from your body is called the back loop. So we only want to work in the back loop. So instead of going under the V, we're going into the V and only under the back loop when we make our single crochets. And we're going to do that for the entire round, working in the back loop only. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. That brings us to the end of round 4 and the end of working in the back loops. From the next round you'll work as normal through both loops. For round 5 we're going to make 18 single crochets, but remember that you started round 4 with a chain stitch. So instead of starting in the first stitch, you're going to start in the second stitch, which is actually your first single crochet of a round. If you forget to skip this chain stitch, you're going to end up with 19 singles instead of 18. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Brings us to the end of round 5. At this point I normally just take my 2 little yarn tails, I tug on them a little bit, and then I hide them in the foot so that I can carry on working. For round 6 we're going to start with 3 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3. We're then going to do a mini pattern of a single crochet followed by a decrease, and we're going to repeat that 4 times. So single crochet followed by decrease number 1, then a single crochet followed by decrease number 2, and a single crochet followed by decrease number 3, single crochet followed by decrease number 4. we're going to finish off with 3 single crochets. So that's 1, 2 and 3, which brings us to the end of round 6. For round 7 we're going to start with 5 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We're going to follow that with 2 decreases. So that's decrease number 1 and decrease number 2. We're going to follow that by 5 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, which brings us to the end of round 7. For round 8 we're going to make 12 single crochets, that's 1 in each stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Brings us to the end of round 8. Now for round 9 and round 10, you're going to repeat exactly the same thing you just did for round 8 by making 12 single crochets, 1 in each stitch around. So I'm going to show you round 9 and 10 in fast forward. Before we carry on with round 11, we're going to stuff the foot. So you just take some stuffing and we're going to push it into the foot. You should be able to get a finger into this. If you can't, just use the back of your hook to help you stuff it. Now we want to stuff the toe area and the foot area, but we want to leave the leg area empty and unstuffed. So make sure that you press your stuffing down nice and firmly into the foot and toe area, but don't fill up the leg. You can see like the whole front tip of my finger still fits in there because we haven't filled it all the way. For round 11 we're going to make 6 decreases. So stitch 1 and 2 gets decrease 1. Stitch 3 and 4 gets decrease 2. Stitch 5 and 6 gets decrease 3. Stitch 7 and 8 gets decrease 4. Stitch 9 and 10 gets decrease 5. Stitch 11 and 12 gets decrease 6. We then finish off with a slip stitch in the next stitch, and we're going to cut off the yarn I'm leaving a short yarn tail because I want to create movable legs. If you want to sew them into a stationary position, you'll need a longer yarn tail than what I've left here. Next, you're going to take your tapestry needle, put your yarn tail on it. We're going to weave in and out around our final opening that we've got here. Pull tight, go in the middle and come out any random space just to work the yarn tail away. Snip it off. And that is what your finished foot and leg should look like. Now we need 2 of these, so you need to repeat the video up to this point until you've got 2 matching legs that we can then attach to the body. It's now time to attach the legs to the body. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to move our arms out of the way by having them point forward. We're going to take the first leg. Now this is what I call the top of the leg, where we finished off, and you want the top of the leg to line up with the belly button that you created, and you want it to be on the side, and you want to make sure that it also lines up with the arm that you've already attached, so that they form a nice line like that. Once you're happy with your positioning, you can pin it into place with 2 pins just to hold it. We're then going to do the same with the other leg on the other side. We want to line the top up with the belly button, and we want to make sure that it's in line with the arm as well before we pin it into place. Now, first we check from the side so that it actually does line up. Check from the front that your belly button is in the middle. And then a very important check is from the bottom. Now, if you look from the bottom, you'll see this one is pointing nicely forward, while this one is pointing way off to the side, and we don't want that. So we need to actually loosen this one and repin it. So we need to take this and twist it this way so that it also points forward. So I just take my pins out, and as you can see, I'm just twisting so that the toe points forward, and then I'm going to replace my pins. And now my toes are pointing forward, both of them at the same angle. I then just double check from the front that it's still centered, double check from the side that it's still in place under the arms, and then it is time to attach the legs. To create movable legs, we're going to use fishing line and our giant needle again, and we're going to use exactly the same method that we did on the arms. So we start by flipping the bunny over. We pick a random stitch in the back to enter through. Push the needle to the left so that it can exit through the leg. And make sure that we leave the tail end hanging out of the fishing line. We're then going to enter through the same stitch that we just came out of. Push through the leg, through the body, through the second leg, and out the other side so that our needle goes straight through. Make sure the fishing line doesn't get caught on anything, and make sure you don't pull your tail end through. We're going to repeat that by going in through the same stitch, through the body. And out the other side. One last time, in through the same stitch, through the body, and out the other side. To finish off, we go in through the same stitch, but instead of going straight through the body, we aim for that same starting stitch where our tail of fishing line is still hanging out. So we want the starting end and the finishing end of our fishing line to go through the same opening. Just like we did with the arms, we are now going to be knotting, and on the first tie we are going to pull tight. Once we've pulled tight, we remove our pins. And pull tight again to make sure our legs are firmly attached. And then we can start knotting. Remember to do several repetitions of a knotting. You don't want this coming loose easily. Snip off short. And hide your knot inside the body. When you run your finger over, you should not be able to feel the fishing. And that will give you legs that have been attached neatly and are able to actually move to a seated position or back to a standing position. So this is what you should have at the moment. Next up, we'll create the tail.